Hello and welcome back to Great American Underdog, where you could get the courage to act, the resilience to keep going, and the discipline when motivation fades. If you like to hear underdog stories, please make sure you subscribe, like, and share this episode with somebody who needs to hear it. Thank you. Today's guest is Alexia Hoffman. She is a TEDx speaker, 2024 Entrepreneur of the Year, mom of 4 daughters, and someone who has quietly built one of the most impressive portfolios you'll probably ever hear about on this show. Alexia started in real estate at 19 years old, and by 23, she was a broker, team lead, and office owner. She now holds a rental portfolio of over 80 doors and owns a coffee shop, all while raising 4 daughters that she had in just 2.5 years. But what makes her story truly remarkable on top of that all is she used to work 60-hour weeks, and she's managed to get that down to just 10 hours. And she didn't do it by scaling back her ambition. In fact, her ambition grew. She did it by building a VA hiring and onboarding framework so dialed in that she can take someone from zero to fully onboarded in under 10 hours. Oh, and 8 months after having her fourth baby, she ran her first half marathon. And 9 months postpartum, she ran and completed her first triathlon. Alexia is here today to share exactly how she did it and how you could use her framework to get your time back without the overwhelm. And with that, please welcome Alexia Hoffman.
Thank you. Wow, I feel like you really just gave them the full rundown. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Yeah, my pleasure, Alexia. After I heard your story and we had an initial conversation, it was just a very synergistic thing to have you on the show. And you have an incredible story and so many things that you do also as an entrepreneur that I feel like anybody that's looking to overcome challenges in their life, whether in life, business, entrepreneurship, physically, mentally, there's a lot that they can learn from you. And I have just in a short time. So let's just dive right in. To even just right now, right? And kind of a tie into your past, but like, what was the part of your life right now that you think people see as the most impressive, but they don't really understand, I guess, what it took to get there?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think most recently I have gotten into triathlons and, I've been running, trying to train for a marathon and a half Ironman this year. Um, and I think what people don't really see or recognize is it really came from a rock bottom point in my life. I had been pregnant for, you know, felt like 4 straight years. In 2.5 years and 30 months, I had 4 daughters. And after my 4th, I really struggled with postpartum depression. I never did with any of my other kids. Um, and I was, 3 months postpartum in a outpatient mental hospital program. So 5 days a week for 2 weeks straight, I was in there every day, just, like, trying to stay alive really is what it was, just fighting to enjoy my life again or, just want to show up, and after that, I was like, "Okay," I was a college athlete, I used to love working out, and I really lost that through pregnancy, so I was like, "If I can just get back into walking," like, I was never the person who would go to the gym and just walk, it was like I had to go and burn the most calories, lift the heaviest I could lift, there was no balance or moderation in that, and so I just gave myself permission to show up and walk and just go twice a week, and it started with that, and then after came 3 times a week, and then it was a walk with my friend 3 times a week, and then I was like, I feel like I can run," and through that, I was like, "Why not try for a triathlon? Like, that sounds fun to, split up the training," and I'm not the fastest, I'm not, I don't train 7 days a week, I miss a lot of days and life happens, but I think that's something that people don't see, how hard it was to really get to that space where I wanted to do the training. I wanted to show up not for anyone else, not for recognition, but really for myself. That was my time for me to feel like myself again and really come back to um who I was before I had kids and who I want to be as their mother.
What was one of the biggest lessons from that season, I guess, for I understand how challenging it can be to go what feels like backwards, right? Like
Mhm.
you went from being a college athlete to just deciding to walk again. I
Yeah.
guess what was like the biggest lessons, like or mindset shifts that you, like you said, you gave yourself permission to walk again that you feel like you got from that experience?
Yeah, I mean, I think really I grew up as a people pleaser. I've been in a lot of therapy and realized that, but for a long time, I think I looked very successful on paper, and I told myself it's what I wanted to be doing, but it wasn't really for me. It was for, um, everyone else's appreciation of me, awe of me. I sounded impressive, so I thought that's what I liked doing, but the reality was I just liked the recognition that came along with it. I was an only child. Both my parents were very active. My dad was super, super sports driven. To this day, that's one of the things that we connect on the most is sports, athletics. He still works out every day. Um, and so I think I took on a lot of that connection with him as, "Oh, I like to do this," or "I want to do this," when really I just wanted the connection that came from that. Same with sports. I love the connection of my teammates, but did I really love the sports, the training? I don't
Mm.
know. So I think through that season, I really learned what felt good for me and giving myself permission. Like last week, I was supposed to do a 10-mile run, and I was excited to do the 10-mile run, funny enough, but I didn't feel good. My kids were up all night long, and I was like, "Okay, I can wake up and go do this run and be miserable for the rest of the day and the weekend." I would have led into the weekend, and I would have been feeling great on my run, but that night I would have been short with my kids. I would have been exhausted, or I can go back to bed when my nanny gets here and skip my 10-mile run, and that's what I did. And I think, a lot of people would look at that and say like, "Oh, you failed, you missed your training." And I was like, that's a big win for me to give myself space to do what actually feels good and serves me. Cause it's the reminder, right? Like I'm running to feel better. I'm not running to be the fastest marathon runner a year postpartum. Like that's not, there's no award for doing this. Like if I mean, I'm not going to be a professional runner. And so there's really no benefit to me doing anything that's like pushing myself to the point of showing up poorly for my family or for my friends or for my business.
Yeah, and I see that as a win as well. Like people have to give themselves grace at times. You
Mhm,
know, and you decided that like the better thing for my family, my health, my business was to not take that run. And I commend you for that because a lot of people, kind of have this like, well, I have to push through those feelings. And sometimes the best thing you could do is actually just take a step back. I know we talked about this, initially. I run 1,000 miles a year for the last 2 years. And when people ask me how I did that, I say, well, I don't put pressure on myself. I just measure. And I don't try to be the fastest. I just try to go and complete the distance that I set for myself every day.
mhm.
And I think that that works also in business and in life, like just in anything really, is you just have to just keep, listening to your body, listening to your mind, following what feels right in the moment, and then giving yourself grace when things come up and saying like, hey, like, I had to take a day off today from running to take care of my mind and my body. That's a win in and of itself because now when I go back out and do that 10-mile run, I'm going to go into that with the right type of energy, mindset, and accomplish it to the highest level that I can. And it's really a
Exactly.
you versus you type of
Exactly.
event, if you will,
Yeah.
whenever you run. So again, you can't get too focused on like I guess the end goal. You have to stay present in where you are. And you decided that day that like I got to stay present and true to who I am and how I feel right now.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of advice around discipline and pushing yourself, and I think when you're somebody that's, of that entrepreneurial mindset, of that, um a high achiever, high performer, high capacity person, I think that advice almost becomes somewhat unhealthy because that's great for somebody who doesn't have discipline. That's great for somebody who needs the motivation. But for somebody who's already so self motivated, when you pair it with that kind of advice, I think it almost becomes this unhealthy, like striving for something that becomes like people pleasing or
Right.
external instead of that internal drive that we already have. And I think that's the danger of the world we live in with all the information that's out there. It's good information. It's not that it's bad information that we're consuming, but it might not be right for us or the season we're in or the mindset we're in. And I think that's where it gets so blurry, especially as a parent, is like you can see really great advice, but when you are in a season with newborns that don't sleep, it just doesn't work for you. And it becomes this comparison trap of like, oh, I saw that that's great advice. I'm gonna do that. Like, I'm gonna get up every day at 5 a.m. Why would you do that if your kids aren't sleeping? Like, don't do that. Like, give
Yeah.
yourself grace and permission. It could be good advice for you in 5 years when your kids sleep, right? Like, so I think there needs to be that ability to distinguish good advice from good advice for you right now.
Yeah, and you mentioned also like the people pleasing thing. I did that a lot as a teenager in my younger years because I never wanted to be the like problem, if you will.
Yeah.
So it was
Mhm.
easier for me to just get along rather than attempt to stir the
Oh, yeah.
pot, if you will. And then in today's world, the comparison game, like you see people say waking up 5 a.m. or if you're an entrepreneur and you're selling actively and the going rate in your industry for high performers is 20 reach outs, visits or phone calls, and you're doing 5 a day and you feel like that's a lot already. So now you're saying to yourself, well, how am I ever going to be a high performer when I'm not doing what the quote unquote high performers are? And what you probably don't see, and I know that you'll elaborate on this too, is just like, well, how do you think that they got to doing 20 a day? They at
Exactly.
some point had to go through that same growth spurt, learning curve in order to get to that point. Nobody just falls out of bed and is just like, "Oh, I'm this super success high performer." It is a buildup, and there are things that are happening behind the screen, especially in today's social media world that most people don't see because what we see on social media especially is very curated.
Exactly. Yeah, I think it's The Gap and the Gain. I don't know if you've read that book, but,
Yeah,
you
Dan
know
Sullivan, right?
yeah, yeah, just, like, living in that
Great point.
space of, like, it's so easy when you see what everyone else is doing, and you might feel good about something, and then you see someone else's version of success, and you're like, "Oh, shoot, I should be going for that. I should be doing more." And it's like, "Wait a second. 6 months ago, that was the goal you set out, and you achieved it." And instead of, like, sitting in that, it's so easy to set the next goal, to go to the next thing. And I think there's that balance, right, of finding what matters to you. Why are you doing it? And when you have connection to that why, that deep why, not just the on paper why or like the, chat GPT why, but like you really know what that purpose is for your life and how it impacts you in 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, whatever it is, that's, I think, where that fulfillment comes in, and that's where success actually serves your life instead of serves other people's impression of you.
Right, it's a perception game,
Mhm.
really. And, just, it's just so great what you said just, about the gap in the gain because I remember when I first read about that, in 10x is easier than 2x, and
Mhm.
also his mention of the David, and when somebody asked Michelangelo, "How did you sculpt the David?" He said, "I took away everything that wasn't the David." So,
I love that.
again, like, just eliminating also things from your life that aren't serving you, and
Mhm.
allowing yourself to chisel out the important things, right? When focusing on health, mindset, and just getting better every single day. So you started at real estate when you were 19 years old in a new state where you didn't know literally anyone. And I was saying before too is like you as an entrepreneur at such a young age, even in real estate, that's a very entrepreneurial role. I always tell people whether they're in a business working as a salesperson or not, like you're a business within a business. You're essentially an entrepreneur no matter what you sell. So, like, what made you believe at 19 years old that you could build something new in a state where you knew anyone? And what made you enter the world of real estate?
Yeah. Yeah, I think some delusion was part of that, but I think that's what makes all entrepreneurs who are successful, successful to some extent, honestly. So, how I got into it is not sexy at all. So long story as short as I can make it. I grew up in Southern California. I moved out to Michigan on a lacrosse scholarship. After my first year, I decided it was not for me. I felt like there was something more out there, but I didn't know what it was. So I ended up quitting lacrosse after my first year, losing my scholarship. And my parents are like, what? Like, what are you doing?" And I was like, "I don't know, but it's not that." So and, like, I loved lacrosse, like, I was the team captain, like, I, signed my junior year of high school, like, that was my identity for a really long time, was I was the lacrosse person. Um, so then coming out to college, like, reinventing myself, my values, my relationship with Jesus, like, all these things were happening, it was very transformational for me. And, I went through a really tough season in regards to relationships and friendships. Being an athlete and having all my friends be athletes and then coming back and not being an athlete, I was not expecting that shift, and the impact it had on those relationships. So once again, I was kind of like, What's going on? Like, what do I do with this?" So I ended up moving out of my college housing, halfway through the second semester, or of my second year. And with that, my parents were like, "Okay, we're not gonna, like, support you anymore if you're kinda going rogue on us." And so I was like, "I gotta make some money, like, what the heck am I gonna do?" And I'm looking online for jobs, and there's all kinds of, like, the scammy, like, "Oh, make all this money, and all you have to do is blah, blah, blah." It was just, like, all of it felt like a scam. And I found this one thing for real estate, and it had, like, a four-step interview process. I'm like, "Okay, that one can't be," like, a lot of it was, like, multi-level marketing, you just kinda do your own thing, and there's not really any guaranteed pay. But this real estate thing, which ended up being also very scammy, but I didn't know that at the time, um, it got me excited about it. Like, the questions, I was doing, my first disc profile, and I was really thinking like an entrepreneur to, like, get this role. And I was hungry. Like, I was like, "I'm going to make this work. Like, I am going to figure it out. I'm gonna pass this exam. I'm gonna do it." And so I passed the exam and I started calling. I did all the things that this guy who was, like, the team lead at the time, like, there was a lot of questionable practices from that first experience, to be honest. And, like, looking back, it was like, I don't have a lot of positive things to say about how he ran his business. And, like, I'm not gonna, like, I don't hold any. I learned a lot that was valuable to me in my career, but it was definitely not a healthy environment for me to be in. When I joined with 10 people, by 6 months, I was the only one left who started with me. So it was, like, a very, very cutthroat, not healthy environment. Everyone was super young. I was the only girl. So it was just a really, like, it's hard to say. My dad came out and he's like, "This guy's taking advantage of young people. Like, this is shady."
Oh, wow.
So in 6 months, I only sold one condo, right? Like, I made, like, not even $3,000 in 6 months. I'm like, "I'm never gonna make it. This is awful." I was
Uh-huh.
just having the typical entrepreneurial breakdown. Like, I'm supposed to be making $100,000 and working 10 hours. This
Where's the
is
money? I don't
on
understand. I can't
yeah,
do anything at this pace.
yeah, entrepreneurial dream. What? What is this? So ended up, one of the people who had left, in my group went to a different company, and she had told their broker about me. And I ran into her at an event, and she's like, "Oh, just come chat with me, blah, blah, blah." So long story short, I ended up switching there. Once I switched there, first year, 20 homes.
Wow.
And then from there, kind of grew and scaled, became a broker and an owner of that company, built my team, yada, yada, burnt it all
Yeah.
down. But how did I do it was also kind of unconventional, because I was 19 when I got started. So 20 by the time or I think I was still 19 when I switched companies.
Right.
And I took all the leads nobody wanted. So I drove an hour to sell a $50,000 house. I did that more than once. I remember I showed over 60 houses to someone who was pre-approved for like $70,000, and ended up losing financing after we were under contract. I had been working with her for like, I don't know, 6 months.
Mhm.
And just like all these people that nobody wanted to work with, but I was so hungry, I didn't care. Like, I was going to find a way, but I also never put money before people. Like, my whole thing was like, I'm never going to try to sell someone a house to make money. I'm going to sell them a house to help them. And I think that's what people lose, especially young entrepreneurs. You can get so caught up in, like, wanting to make money that you kind of lose your value system. And that's not like a jab at young entrepreneurs. It's like, just stay focused on who you are, your value system, because you can get into an industry and there's a lot of people that have done things that are shady, and they'll try to pull you into that. And that's not the way to do it. I
Right.
remember that first company I was at, one of the agents, there was one listing agent, and he told me, I, like, listened to his calls. He was like, "Come listen," because they were kind of trying to get me to go that way. He's
Mhm.
like, "Come listen," and he goes, "Okay, so if somebody says something about their brother, then you talk about your brother. If someone says something about their kids, you talk about your kids." And I'm like, "I don't have kids. I don't have a brother." He's like, "It doesn't matter. Like, you need to relate to whatever they're saying." And I'm like, "I'm not
Do
doing
anything you
that."
can to build rapport.
Yeah, and I'm like, "I'm not doing that. Like, that's not me," you know? And it was like, we had this list of 10,000 or so people we're calling through, and I'm calling every day from 8 to 5. I'm doing the things, right? I'm hustling hard, and I did learn good habits through the, dialing and the outreach, but these people were like, "Do not call me. We don't wanna be on your list." And the owner would be like, "Okay, put them back on the list the next day." And I'm like, "They've said they don't wanna." He's like, "Well, they might need a rental. They might need a vacation home. I'm like, "They have made it very clear to take them off the list." Like, so I think it's learning, like, the industry, but also staying true to who you are and who you want to be in that industry, even if you haven't made it yet.
You said so much, and one of the things I want to point out is that first role that you were in, and I want to say that that individual was an anti-mentor for you. What not taught you what not to do, and I
Yes.
feel like very early on, a lot of people, especially entrepreneurs, they need that. Like you need to see what's not the right way of doing things, and then trust your gut enough to say, okay, I think I figured out. Like I definitely don't want to be that when I
Yeah.
grow up in the world of entrepreneurship, right?
Yeah.
And then helping people figure out what's best for them and being able to go after those quote unquote smaller deals. Everybody, like you said, they want to get into business, they want to hit the home runs, but they skip out on singles, doubles, and triples,
Yeah.
right? If we're, as a baseball
Yeah.
analogy here, there's all those opportunities that you could be helping people who probably honestly need it more if you think about it in ways. It takes a little bit
1,000%.
more effort to do that, but that's also where you get a lot of, like you said, experience and skills, and
Oh, yeah.
putting people back on a list. Like that guy is clearly very much like that old school, like let's just drill people until they either say flat out no, or they uh succumb to the pressure and say yes to something to just get you off their back. That doesn't work
Yeah.
with people, especially in today's day and age. You have to be ready to help them when they're ready to be helped, and just
Yeah.
let them know that you're that trusted resource when that time comes. And be a
1,000%.
like you said, just be a regular human being. Show them who you actually are. Real
Yeah.
quick on that point too is like I've experienced that myself, where you think that you have to go in with being so polished, so scripted, so well spoken, and really you just got to go in and be like, "Hey, this is what I do. This is how I help. I would love to be of assistance to you," and start asking some questions to find out what their problems are and make it not about you. And I think
Yeah.
that what you just explained exemplifies that.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I think as a young woman trying to get into real estate, I always like love to show my first headshot. I'm like in this suit that I wore in my like high school mock trial, and I'm like trying to be all professional. And it took me probably a year before I was comfortable, like, going in, like, jeans to showings or something, and it's like, that's me, like, I'm in jeans right now, like, you're not gonna see me in a suit very like, I have a hot pink and a blue suit that I wear because like, that's different vibes, but, like,
Yeah.
you're never gonna see me in a black suit coat, just, like, in a button-up shirt anymore, like, I threw that stuff out because that wasn't me, that's not my brand, and, like, nobody cares about like, you looking on paper how you're supposed to look if you can't provide the relationship, provide the service that matters to them. And I think we get so caught up in that comparison game, right? Going back
Yes.
to that of like who we think we're supposed to be, that we lose sight of who we actually are. And that's the value, right? Like the value I bring is not that I'm this, oh, I'm a high pressure salesperson. I'm gonna get it done. No, like that's not me. I am all about like, hey, when you're ready, I'm here and I'm never gonna pressure you and I'm not gonna make you sign a contract right away. And I'm not gonna do all the things that the high pressure salespeople taught me to do because it doesn't work. But I think also like on that anti-mentor like track, I think you know, you wonder there was a reason they started doing that, right?
Mhm.
Like,
Of
is
course.
that how they found success, or is it they saw someone else doing that? Like, how did it work? To me, in real estate, right? Like they say it's a 7-year cycle. So you need to stay relevant to someone for about 7 years before they're gonna need a realtor again.
Huh.
And so for me, that was the big shift I had was, okay, I like social media. I'm big on social media. It's important to me to share, and I think that's how I have stayed top of mind for a lot of people. But at first I started,
Right.
I'm posting all this real estate stuff. And then I'm like, well, a lot of people don't really care about the real estate stuff. They want to know what's going on in my life. I got much more engagement when I would post about a rental we're buying or a trip I'm going on or, and like that's the brand, right? That's what people are reaching out to me about. Yes, they want me to be their realtor, but they want me to be their realtor because they see how I live my life. They see how I exemplify entrepreneurship and that's what they're after. They don't really need the house tip. They don't want a staging tip from my Instagram. I'm going to meet with them one-on-one and I'm going to tailor that advice to them. But me posting like, "Oh, how to stage your house or, listing process," that is not beneficial to 98% of people that are going to see that post. So, I think it's, remembering that as you're building your brand is like, what is the value you bring 1% is probably the knowledge you have, and 99% is who you are and how you show up for those people.
I think what you just said too is people are tired of this very polished kind of posting. Like we're on the topic of social media, like this
Yeah,
very curated type of feed from somebody that
yeah,
even if you're giving them tips, people aren't dumb. They're
yeah,
like they know that if you were attempting to educate me on something, it's because you want to educate me to
to
get
sell
me
me.
to trust you about what you want to sell me.
Yep,
Because again, it becomes indirectly about us and not them versus when you're showing things like, you as a mom, you completing, the triathlon, the half marathon, the coffee shop, telling stories about your experiences, that's what really resonates with people because they can sink their teeth into that and see pieces of themselves in it. Like, even when I've posted, things about running, boxing, my wife, my life, like those things get so much more engagement than if I'm trying to give somebody a business development or
yep,
sales or marketing tip because they know that that's coming from a place of like, yes, I want to do that to educate and help people, but they also feel that's very businessy, and they're not going
exactly.
to these platforms really for that, and they want to connect with a real person. So you're spot on.
Yeah, I posted this video of my house and laundry and, like, I had 7 loads of clean laundry that I needed to fold one day, and I made a reel and I put, like, a horror movie, but it's just my house at 8 p.m. And I'm not kidding you, that reel still to this day, I have thousands of comments on it, like hundreds of thousands of views. My engagement in the last 30 days is like over 250,000 because of that video with the, it's just crazy because and I'm posting all these talking head rants. I'm trying to come up with the scripts. I'm doing and nobody wants to see me talking about delegation. I mean, like, a couple people do, thankfully.
Yeah, yeah,
But,
come
majority of people are really just wanting to, either relate to my messy house or they wanna bitch at me for my messy house, which is fine. Like,
yeah.
the algorithm is rewarding me for your rude comment, so go for it. If you like, and I think there is this, like, people need an outlet, and if it's my messy house and you need a place to have some angry energy and you wanna leave me a mean comment, I don't care. Like, my life is not I'm not gonna feel differently because you're telling me I need to clean my house. Like, that's fine. So I think it's, so interesting when you go on social media and you look at it from a lens of like, what's this person going through where they're coming here and they're commenting either, "Oh my gosh, I feel so seen. I really relate. This is my house." Or, "Oh my gosh, you need help. You're, ruining your children. Like, there's roaches in there." I'm like, "Okay, I have a house cleaner once a week, everybody. Calm down, calm down." But, it's like, "Oh, someone's gonna call CPS on you." It's like, "All right, like, if that's what you need to get out of your system, sister, like, you do it. I will be the punching bag.
Yeah,
I don't care."
and mind you, at the same time, when you visit my profile, you'll see exactly what I do, and maybe that will resonate with you as well. Um,
Exactly.
I think though, to this point, uh, it takes a certain level of work ethic to constantly be in front of people, and I also think that they stop themselves from sharing their story or the behind the scenes stuff because they are worried about looking bad to other people, right? Everybody's
Oh,
worried
yeah.
about what other people are going to think. For yourself, like, how did you ever have to overcome that hurdle, or that mindset trap
Oh, yeah.
yourself?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, getting into real estate at 19, I really struggled with the age thing. Like, I remember I never lie. I am like a really, really brutally honest person. And I lied to someone about my age. And I still, it haunts me. One person, I lied to her, and we're still friends on Facebook. I've worked with her multiple times. I've told her, like, she now knows how old I am. But for years, I was like mortified if my age became a topic. It probably started where I had a younger client and her parents were going with us to showings, and they asked about the area, and I was like, "Oh, there's this great brewery right, right next door." And the dad turns to me and goes, "You don't look like you're old enough to drink. You barely like 12 years old." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh," like my whole ego, right? Like it still like hurts just because I thought I was carrying myself as this professional woman, blah, blah, blah. So I think for a long time it was my age. I think once I had kids, that really shifted for me, especially daughters, because I wanted to model how I want them to feel, and, like, I want them to feel confident in who they are and that they're enough without needing to change or fit for everyone else, and I think I didn't realize how much I did that until I had kids. Um, and I mean, my parents I grew up in Southern California where appearance is very, very important, and so I think a lot of it kind of became like looking around and having conversations with my parents or, different people and realizing like, ooh, I don't want to show up like that. Like I would rather be known for being chaotic and messy and real than for being the person who always has it put together, but oh, actually you weren't supposed to see that. My closet's a mess, or oh, you weren't supposed to see that I have dishes in the sink. Like I would much rather be like too much and authentic than perfect and polished, but like nobody really trusts it. And so I think once I had those experiences and I did share the things that were really scary to share and I saw the response, I was like, okay, like I like someone needs to do this. And why can't it be me? Like I if anyone could do it, it's me. Like, I'm the kind of person who's like, I am willing to like, I'm gonna stand my ground and I'll fight for what I believe in. And so I think if it helps one person, it's worth it. And I'm at the point in my life where I just don't care enough about what people think to let it stop me.
That's how I feel a lot about the podcast, regardless if it ever gets, hundreds of thousands of subscribers, millions of subscribers. If it helps one person, then that has reach into their lives. I did my job, right? Like people get so
Exactly.
hung up on the vanity metrics. And also like there's this level of giving yourself
Mhm.
permission to be bad, permission to be authentic,
Yeah.
rather than trying to fit in and do the comparison game like we talked about earlier. And that brings me to like the work ethic piece of what you that is instilled in you, Alexia, which is like, you went from working 60 hours to just 10 hours, right? And I think that that's because you gave yourself a different level of permission, the permission to delegate. As
Mm.
entrepreneurs, a lot of times we feel like we have to do everything. If we're not touching it and doing it and
Oh,
we're
yeah.
not overseeing it, it's now like out of our control. Like, so what can happen like that? So you've mastered being able to hire VAs and onboard
Yeah.
them. So like what was like, I guess first tell me about how you found that. I'm sure some through some research, but like what was like one of the first real things that you delegated that created leverage for you and not just help that actually took something off your plate?
Yeah. So when I was pregnant with my twins, I had my team in my office and um I set up systems. I put in air quotes, systems that I thought would allow me to take a maternity leave to the extent that I wanted to. I never intended to not be available. I never intended to like be fully gone for, a period of time, but I figured okay, at least a month of just being away. I'm available if somebody needs me, but I'm stepping back. And as I was being wheeled into the operating room, because I went into labor a little early, I was on the phone with a client and an agent. And the nurses were like, "We have to take your phone, like, you can't have that in the operating room." And mind these are my first kids, like, I've never had kids before. So, like, I'm literally being wheeled in and I'm, like, negotiating a deal and trying to connect a client with another agent, and the nurses are like, "Okay, we have to go, like, you're in labor." So, I think that was kind of my, like, aha moment, and it's funny now, but, like, at the time, I was, like, so proud of that. I was like, "Look at
I'm
me,"
still
like
working.
yeah, like 4 days after I had the twins, I wrote an offer. I was negotiating while I was, like, pumping, like, a week postpartum from having twins, like, I felt so cool, and I was like, "That's sad." Like, looking back, like, I'm sad for that version of me, right? Like, I think I was and it's sad not because I did it, I'm sad because of how proud I was of it. Like, "Look at me, I can work through anything," and it's like, that's not who I want to be. And I think with having kids, like, it's the same thing as a parent, like, who do I want my kids to be? Who do I want like, do I want my kids to feel they have to do that to earn their worth? Heck no. So how am I gonna teach them that if I'm modeling something different? Like, I just couldn't live like that. After, all of that with the twins and I had a business coach and I was making great money. It wasn't a money thing. It was really a control thing of like, I want to do it my way. And so I hired a business coach, and the first thing I delegated was actually showings for real estate. Like that was like the big thing that really gave me my leverage and time back. And before I worked with that business coach, and even when I started working with her, I was like, there is no way I can give up showings. Like that is my job as a realtor. Like I need to open the doors. But the reality is, like, that's not my value. Like, my value is negotiation. My value is informing my clients, guiding them through the process, making sure they save the most amount of money or make the most amount of money, depending on what side they're on. Um, and it's not opening doors and it's not even sending them paperwork a lot of the times. Like, obviously, I'm sending like purchase agreements, but I have a transaction coordinator. So she does all the back end paperwork and but the showings was the huge one because that was, like, the mental thing of letting go of that, like, "Okay, I don't need to open the door, what?" Like
How-
and it was setting that expectation with the clients, and never once has someone batted an eye, never. And they actually like it because the showing agents are way more available than I am. Like, I have limited childcare, I have, other clients, my life's insane. Like, you don't wanna wait around for me to open that door, let me tell you. But I will tell you how to win the offer. I'll tell you how to save the most amount of money. I'll tell you how we can be aggressive, and that's where my value is. So I think once I shifted and I realized how well that worked, I think that was the turning point for me of, okay, I need to start delegating anything that someone else can do 80% as well as I can. It's worth delegating, right? And now I'm hyper focused on these money producing activities, on the needle movers, on the things I want to be doing that are fun, the passion projects that I didn't have time for because I'm spending so much time on admin, paperwork, showings, back end, Canva. Like, there's an extent of that where it's like you're just kind of spinning your wheels to feel like you're doing something and it's not actually beneficial.
The I can work through anything just equates to, in a crazy way, you think it's you being tough, and it's really you aligning yourself with struggle and
Yeah.
challenge.
Yeah.
Because I have so many parallels with you, Alexia. Like just as you've been talking, just with my own upbringing, my own entrepreneurial journey, and some of the things that I've experienced that you have as well. And even like just from when I used to sell cars with Audi, and I was a brand specialist with them, I used to always feel like I had to do the vehicle delivery because no
Mhm.
one's going to deliver the vehicle like I can and show them how to work everything, etc. And
Yeah.
when I actually gave that away to a delivery coordinator, it didn't change anything.
Yep.
People still felt very comfortable, and like you said, it's more of that they come to you for the guidance through the process. And I love what you said about 80% as well as I can. You can delegate to somebody that can do the job 80% as well as you, and it's still going to give you the movement you need in that arena so you can focus on those 20% signal moving action item activities that fill you up and make
Yeah.
you feel great and alive. And I think people tend to miss that a lot. And You gave a lot of great examples of what you've delegated, but for someone who's never hired a VA before, like what's the first role essentially, I guess, they should hire for so that way they can actually get their time back? I'm sure it changes depending on their
Yeah.
their use case.
Yeah, I think, the biggest thing if someone has never hired a VA, and I'm speaking from my own mistakes here. Everything I've learned is because I did it wrong first. So I'm not coming from a high and mighty, like, oh, I'm so great. Listen to me. It's like, no, like I did this the wrong way. So hopefully I can help you not do this. So the biggest thing is if your business feels chaotic right now, if it feels like you don't have great systems and you don't really know where your energy is going or what you should be doing, or you want to do something different, but you're not sure. Delegation is not the first step in that. It
Mm,
needs to be systematized before you bring someone in, or you're just adding another person to chaos.
right.
So, what I mean by that is not that you need to refurbish your whole business. You need to spend 6 months and overhaul and work 80 hours. Like, no, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is you need to spend 2 hours. This is what I do with people. Like I do it with them, but you can do it by yourself. You don't need to like use me. This is not like a sales pitch, but spend 2 hours and identify your role or your roles, multiple. I have like this whiteboard here from a session I did yesterday. So what we do is we go through all the roles and the tasks that you're doing, right? Then we identify, okay, which of these don't need you, you don't like doing, or are not a good use of your time. And then which ones are repetitive? So which ones do you see coming up again and again and again? And once you identify those, what we do is we figure out, okay, what can we put a system around, right? So which one of these processes can be systematized? So let's say you work in an environment where you're onboarding customers or clients or members. It doesn't really matter, but you have some kind of human that you're bringing into your ecosystem. So that's the first thing, right? You want to put a system around that ecosystem, around that person coming into your ecosystem. So it doesn't have to be fancy, but what I do is I go to ChatGPT, AI of your choice, and I voice note it and I say, okay, I need a SOP for onboarding this person. I'm using these tools and systems, and these are the steps that I want included. It should have these parts automated, and these parts need to be done by a physical person. And I want these checklists in place to make sure nothing gets missed. Create the SOP so that a VA can execute it without asking me any questions. So I put that in, it spits out this long thing. Typically, it's a few pages, and it gives them the tools, the steps, the checklist so I can make sure nothing gets missed. Once you have that SOP, you don't need to even execute it. You don't need to go through it. But now you have that. So when you do bring on a VA, you have a rough outline. And it might not be perfect. It might be missing steps. It might be clunky. There might be a better way to do it. But part of that SOP is explaining what the goal is. So, right, the goal of that task is to bring people into my ecosystem where they feel they have had human interaction and they feel welcomed, right? I'm
Mhm.
just using this as an example.
Yeah.
So as long as you have the goal on that SOP, now you're giving that assistant or that whoever you bring in to delegate the task to, you're not just giving them a checklist of tasks. You're giving them a desired outcome that they can be responsible for. And that's the shift, right? Because if you're bringing a VA on and you're just giving them task and task and task, and it's chaotic and you don't know what they don't know what they're doing, it's hard to be accountable and grow. But if you put the goal on there, and then what I do is I tell them, if you see a better way to do this and achieve this goal, do it. Change the SOP and make it more efficient, make it better, whatever you think, because you're the one in there. I'm not in there. I don't know what you're doing. If this isn't right, if there's a better way, do it. As long as it's the same goal and you're hitting those same key points. So going back to that list of the things that you're doing, right? You make a SOP just like that in ChatGPT or whatever AI you use. You go in, say, give me a SOP, give me a SOP, give me a SOP. Now that you have those standard operating procedures for those reoccurring tasks, those tasks you don't like doing, what you're going to want to do is you put them in a library. I typically build out a Trello board when I'm bringing on a VA. The reason I do this is I build out this Trello board and it has things like, okay, login and resources. So what platforms are they using? Does that platform have training videos they can watch so you don't have to spend your time teaching them? What login information do they need? Then I have a training training card. So that'll have different training tasks as they are onboarding. Then I have ongoing projects, one-time projects, and team projects. So basically, you lay out kind of different things that they're going to be responsible for doing. The reason I make this a Trello card is that then I duplicate it. So if for any reason this assistant doesn't work out, you can bring someone else on and you're not starting over. So
What
that's
is
where
the Trello card, Alexia?
a Trello, it's like a free, so Trello is like a free online system for organizing tasks. So
Hmm,
you have a ability to, there's a premium thing, but you definitely don't need that. It's like a to-do list, if you will, but it's broken up into different categories and you can house different links and you can house text, you can put due dates on there, you can communicate with each other in that. So that's what I would recommend if you're looking to delegate. It's really a place to house everything, like where all your stuff lives.
right.
The other thing, if you are going the virtual assistant route, is make sure you have a great way to see what they're doing. So for me, what that looks like is beginning and end of day reports with blockers noted and something flagged if it's taking longer than 30 minutes, an hour. Obviously, if you have a different kind of company where it's a lot of big projects, then you decide. But I really want to know where their time's going.
Right.
And my other rule for my virtual assistants is if you're clocked in, you should be available to get on a video call within 3 minutes. And if not, that means you're not working, right? You can clock out anytime. I'm never going to be mad at you for clocking out. If you have a reason and you need to clock out, no biggie. But if you're clocked in, you need to be available. You need to be responding to messages. I don't want to wonder where you are and what you're doing. So that beginning of the day report says, here's the things I'm planning to work on. And that gives me an opportunity to look it over and say, oh, actually, I want you to focus on this today, or this is more important, yada, yada. And then at the end of day, this is what I completed. This is what I got halfway through, and this is where I'm stuck. And I need your review, feedback, whatever it is. So that was
So
a long answer to your question, but that's where I would get started, is to come up with these systems that you can have them execute as a starting point. And then from there, you can make changes and tweaks, but you need to give them some form of systems, even if it's nothing you've ever done, but what you want your business to do. That's a great place to start. You don't have to have it all figured out and you've done it 1,000 times perfect, but that's a great way to test something. If you're like, "Oh, I really wanted to try the system out," but you don't want to spend your time doing it, give it to someone new and see how it goes.
that's a great piece of advice because, one of the things I was thinking about while you're talking is like, why do most people fail when hiring a VA or really hiring anybody? And it's
Yeah.
because they don't have a system or process in place and they haven't figured out exactly what that person's role and responsibilities are. Like, I don't know if you've ever read the book Traction by Gino Wickman, but he
Yep.
talks very much about, core values. What exactly are they going to be doing? And then do they GWC or do they get it? Do they want it? Are they capable of it?
Yep.
So, when you're looking to bring somebody on, and I feel like this is where people fall short a lot, even with onboarding physical in-person employees,
Mhm.
is they don't really have all that baked out, like you just said. So you've essentially created a framework for bringing on and onboarding employees, whether they're virtual or in person. I
Yeah.
think I think the rules apply either way. I think the other
1,000%.
the other bigger question for me would be like, how did you figure out how to stay so organized?
Oh my gosh.
I feel like that in and of itself, people heard what you just said and they're like, okay, Alexia, that sounds awesome. That's exactly what I want. But
Yeah.
do they start with like a Trello board?
Yeah.
Where
So
that the best way?
yeah. So I have realized I used to identify as like very hardcore type A, and now I'd say I'm very much like type C, right? Which is like the total opposite. Like I am chaotic. I'm the person who is packing, like stopping at the store and buying the wrapping paper on the way to the birthday party. Like I am not the organized, got it together person. I'm not as much as I want to be. So I think for this, right, like organization is a loose term to me because I'm relying on those people to stay organized for me. So I'm doing very little. And that's where my framework, the 10-hour thing, it's like you're spending 10 hours of your time and then you're hands off for the most part, but you're creating a system that's super easy to duplicate or bring someone else on or turn over if they don't work. It's not something that you're having to constantly recreate because that's what I did wrong. I brought on these assistants, I had in-person assistants, I had virtual assistants, and I didn't have systems. And I was like, okay, like here's what you're gonna do. And here's how you do it, and here's the login for this, and, I have a Google sheet I can share with you, and blah, 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 blah. That was just me, like, running around all the time. And then one of them, she didn't she got fired. I ended up firing her, but it was very unexpected. It was not like I was not planning to fire her, and it was unfortunate how it shook out, and I was like, "Oh, crap." Like,
Mm.
she is doing all these things. I don't even know what she's doing. I don't know how to figure out what she did. Then, funny enough, this is not a lie. Like, this has really happened to me. Like, within a month, I had a virtual assistant, and I had hired him through a company paying way more than I should have, and I learned a lot. Um, and I had made a comment like, "Yeah, it was weird. His tasks used to take 30 minutes and now they're taking a full day, and I don't really know what he's doing, and he asked for 2 weeks off and it was just weird." And they come back on, and they're like, "Oh, yeah, we found out he was working someone else. He quit, and, although he's supposed to give you a 2-week offboarding, he's just done. He's not gonna come back. So, we'll have to hire." And I went from having 2 assistants to no assistants in less than
Oh,
a
wow.
month, and it was, like, it was right around the holidays. It was crazy. It was, like, literally insane. Um, and I was just like, "Oh my gosh, I'm starting over, like, from nothing. What do I do? Where do I go from here?" And it came from that. That's how I became quote unquote organized. So to answer your question, yes, I would say start with a Trello board, build that out. If you're looking to hire a virtual assistant, like really what you need, the key pieces are going to be standard operating procedures, a list of the tools, any training videos they have, logins, and then some tasks. So think about things that are ongoing and think about one-time things that you want to implement into your business. That's where I would start. And, another kind of key piece of advice is when you're interviewing, it's great to do a trial task. So, you could either do that as part of the interview process or within the first week. Anytime I hire a virtual assistant, they have a 2-week trial period. I have the right to fire them at any point in the first 2 weeks. So I get a feel pretty quickly. The best advice that I've ever gotten that's also the hardest for me to implement is to hire slow and fire fast. I'm really bad at firing. I'm just too emotionally connected. But
Right.
once I started doing that, it did change, and I realized how much time and money I lost from keeping the wrong hire on. So yeah,
Yeah.
another quick side note about virtual assistants, sorry, just because I wanna provide value. I have hired amazing virtual assistants for as little as $2 an hour. My most expensive one is like $6 an hour. And she's phenomenal. I think, she is due for a promotion or a raise, whatever you want to call it. But you don't need to spend a ton of money to get help. And I think people get so lost, especially if you look at a virtual assistant company. Like the first one was like 13 bucks an hour. He was not making $13 an hour. He was probably making $2 an hour, but this company is taking all that money. So if you're someone who's like, "Oh my gosh, I wanna hire someone, but I can't afford it," you can afford $3 an hour, like, for part-time. Like, just I if you're listening to this, I'm assuming you can afford it, and if you can't, that's a different conversation.
Yeah, and I appreciate you deep diving that. That's the type of things that I think people need to hear if they're looking for help. And also they don't know what they don't know. They think of
Yeah.
hiring somebody, I'm gonna have to pay him, 20, $30 an hour for the type of help that I need,
Yep.
when really it's out there for a lot less. So I appreciate you like kind of deep diving into that. And
Yeah.
then, I would imagine that that falls very much in line with your fulfillment first framework, right?
Mhm.
Like being able to do more of the things that fulfill you, and success, as you call it, success that you can live with. Like, what
Yeah.
are, I guess, the foundational elements of building that quote unquote success you can live with? I know that you've covered a good bit of it, but maybe there's some other things that I'd love for you to share.
Yeah, yeah. I think, the biggest part of that is really identifying your why. And to do that successfully and to get away from the noise of what you think your why is, look 5, 10 years in the future and think of like a random Tuesday night. What do you want to be doing? Who do you want to be with? What do you want your house to look like? What do you want your car to look like? How many hours do you want to be working? Really just get into that room, and spend some time journaling or voice noting. It doesn't matter, but allow yourself to not have any limits. Don't think about your current life. Don't think about your current situation. Just fully think about, like, in this dream fantasy world, what would my life look like in 10 years? And, like, for me, I think, okay, well, how old will my kids be? How old will I be? What will my businesses be like? How much money do I need to be making? Do I want to be traveling? Where do I want to live? What kind of car? Like, just the dumb stuff that people, I think, consider superficial, or consider to be, like, I don't know, not important in business. Like, don't just think about business, think about your life. And then you go backwards from that. And I think when you can clearly identify what you want in 10 years, then you can start building a plan to get there. Because I think we always overestimate what we can do in a short time and we underestimate what we can do in a long time. I stand by that 1,000%. My life
I
changed
agree.
so quickly and I never would have believed it. But it was all because I looked at the short term, like, I knew my why. When we started buying rentals, it was about passive income. It was about freedom of time, freedom of money. Through that, I ended up buying, an old elementary school, an old hardware store. I own a coffee shop, not because I wanted to do these things. Like, I own a frat house. It's not like, oh, I really, I wanted to buy this frat house. It was like, no, I had a clear vision for where I was going. And so I could look at each opportunity and say, is this in alignment with my tenure or is this not? Okay, I'm going to pass on that. This doesn't really make sense, but it is in alignment with what I want. So let's try it, and I think once you can live into that, it gives you the roadmap, if you will, to get there, but you have to stay intentional of, like, allowing it to evolve also, because who I was 10 years ago and what I wanted so badly is so different than who I am now. So I think there's a two-part, right? Like, what are the things that keep showing up as things that are important to you? And then what are the things that evolve? I talk about joy trends, which are things throughout your life that have brought you joy, and what do they have in common? So for me, like, I loved lacrosse, but then I looked back and I'm like, did I really like lacrosse? No, what I liked was my leadership roles in lacrosse and my community that I got from lacrosse. And the reason I was able to identify that was because I looked at the other things that I really got joy and, excitement from. And it was mock trial. I was also a leader in that role. I was the first president. I liked that. I really loved, different aspects of my life. If you go back and you think, okay, what were the things I was involved in? What did I like about those things? And you can identify the different pieces that they have in common. That's where you'll find those joy trends. And then that's what you want to put into your life every day that you're living now.
That's incredible from the standpoint of, I feel like when people get so overwhelmed in the midst of what they're doing, right? Like you said, knowing your why,
Yeah.
and it's easy to talk about. It's another thing to, like you said, sit down and think about that random. I wrote down the random Tuesday night vision,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like
That's what I always
creating,
say. Random Tuesday. I don't know why Tuesday. It's always Tuesday.
but it's like, yeah, there's nothing that hypothetically going on a
Yeah.
Tuesday, and like I'm just living life. What does that look like when I'm just in my everyday, and how
Yeah.
does that feel? And I think people get very disconnected to that because, and I've had that happen in my life, right, where you feel a certain amount of overwhelm because, especially if you're not at the point of the time freedom or the passive income, and that's two of the things that you're looking for in your life.
Yeah.
It's hard to future cast yourself into this vision when, well, I got to pay my bills right now. I have
Mhm.
to get these other things done. If I don't close this deal this week, how am I going to pay rent?
Yeah.
And I think that people, they hear that, and it becomes harder for them to put it into practice no matter how ambitious they are. So, like, I guess what's one change that those individuals could make that could give them some relief from the overwhelm?
Yeah, I think, when you set big goals, it's supposed to be a little bit overwhelming, right? That's what's exciting about it. And that's why it feels so good, because it is so far from where you are. But I would say set one goal that you can achieve in the next 30 days that puts you closer to that life. So it doesn't need to be a huge step, but just one thing that you can do in 30 days that's pushing you towards that vision. So, for example, if you know for a fact that you really want to have passive income and you're curious about buying rental properties, read a book, buy a book. Buy a book on starting single family rentals. Brandon Turner, listen to Bigger Pockets podcast. That's a great resource. Follow somebody on social media that's living a life similar to what you want. So just do something like that in 30 days and just pick one thing. You can even go once a week, depending on how aggressive you want to be with it. But just one thing like that. It's like following someone on social media, reading a book, listening to a podcast. Find somebody who is living the life that you're dreaming of and see what they're doing and how they're doing it and just get in their ecosystem. And I really believe in paying for proximity. You know, if there's someone that's doing something that you want to do, how can you get in a room with them? How can you have a conversation with them? How can you, and it doesn't need to be like a big, big influencer or Tony Robbins or, it doesn't need to be anybody like that. Just find a real person that is doing the things that you want to do and send them a DM on Instagram. You'd be surprised. Like, I don't think people are as, scary or untouchable as we make them out to be a lot of the times. Now, obviously, there's certain people, there's parameters, but if you can find someone that's like not this big elevated person, but they are doing what you want, like, how can you build a relationship with them and how can you add value to their life so that they'll share with you what's worked?
I feel people believe, like you said, that who's going to want to talk to me? I'm like a nobody compared to them. When in reality, and I've experienced this in rooms myself at mastermind groups and things I've attended, where like they want you to ask for help.
Yeah.
They want somebody that's going to be ambitious enough and be like, "Hey, I saw what you did with this. I appreciate how you've created X, Y, and Z.
Mhm.
I'd love the opportunity to get some feedback from you and just ask." And I think
Yeah.
that people stop themselves from asking. Would you say that that's like a truth that you feel like high achievers would accept sooner? Like just go and ask for help. Like
Oh, yeah.
if you're on that journey to achieving something great in your life, whether it's entrepreneurship, athletics, etc.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think having the ability to put your ego aside and say, I need help is the first step towards achieving that next level. I don't think there's anybody that's made it that's going to tell you they just did it by knowing and doing everything themselves, right? Every single person who has made it big, quote unquote, whatever that looks like for them, it's because they found someone smarter than them, they found someone better than them, they found someone, with more resources, whatever, and they figured out like, okay, I don't have that yet. I want to have what they have. How can I get help to get there? It's not just doing it on your own. I think entrepreneurship can feel so lonely if you let it, but the reality is we are all going through different experiences and a lot of us are willing to share, right? Like we want to be in community with other people that are doing those things. That we want to have people walk alongside us and say, "I also struggle with that." And I think that's where that perfectionism comparison, it gets so dangerous because you see someone else's highlight reel, but really they're struggling with a lot of the same things or, you know, things that you would never imagine they are because they're just not sharing about it.
Yeah, it's so true. You Alexia, you've been so gracious with your time, and I want to remain courteous to that. And you've definitely delivered so much value. And just thank you for being willing to share your story and your own journey. As we get ready to close out, I go to this thing called the Underdog Round, where I ask a little bit of rapid fire questions.
Okay.
Especially from somebody like you who just is very insightful and thorough. I'd love
Okay.
to hear your responses to some of these. So, like, what's the best advice you've ever received about building a life and not just a career?
Ooh, okay. Best advice would be to focus on what matters to you. Like, don't lose sight of your priorities of why you started. So, if you started for your family, don't lose sight of that and say, oh, I'm going to provide for my family by working more when your family just wants you. So, I think really just being mindful of why you got into what you got into. And no matter what success comes, don't let that be your downfall.
Love that. What belief about yourself did you have to let go of? Ultimately, the biggest belief about yourself to become who you are right now.
Ooh, that's a good one too. I feel like that I have to be good at everything. Just letting go of the belief of like, okay, I have to have it all figured out before I can start, or I have to have it all figured out before I can let people in. I think just being okay with being messy and being chaotic and being loud and too much and all the things that, I was told as a kid as negatives. It's like, no, I'm leaning into that. And that's who I am. And that's okay.
I'd like for you to finish this sentence for me. The world needs more people who.
Who love what they're doing, and who they're around.
That's great. It's just people. It's really just, again, people driven, and being in alignment with what you truly love. That's the best. I think that's the best outcome that anybody could ever hope to achieve. And a lot of what you've shared today, I think, is going to inspire people to go out and do just that. Alexia, what's the best way people can get in touch with you and follow your work and even work directly with you?
Yeah, alexiahoffman.com is my website. Everything is there that you could possibly want to know about me, probably. And Instagram is where I'm at. So it's at Alexia Hoffman Co. You can also find that through my website, but alexiahoffman.com, there's resources there. That's you can find my social, you can email me on there. And I do have coaching offers. So for anyone who's looking to get help with, hiring a VA, some systems, business coaching, whatever, it's all there.
Beautiful. Any last things you want to leave the audience today?
I think just wherever they're at, whatever they're going through, just give yourself grace and spend some time on your Tuesday night vision and figure that out and then work backwards, but let yourself go wild. Don't let anything be off the table. Like 10 years from now, 15 years from now, it doesn't matter how old you are, it doesn't matter what you're doing right now. Like give yourself permission to dream big and actually work towards that just in small little bites.
Alexia, I gotta thank you. It's been such an insightful conversation, and I'm already ready to have you back on the show because there's so much additional information and things to your story that I think people would love to hear. But thank you so much just for sharing everything that you did today. This has been another incredible episode of Great American Underdog, where you can find the courage to act, the resilience to keep going, and the discipline when motivation fades. Thank you for listening. And if you got value from this episode, please be sure to subscribe, like, and share this with someone who you feel it could help. Have a great day.